everybody. Welcome to Living Lit with Professor Chow. And I am very excited to introduce you to aspiring author, published author, Stephen Greer Williams. And I have your book right here in front of me.
Oh, awesome.
It probably looks backwards, but it's really cool. And so thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, happy to do it.
Afternoon. Yeah, great. Well, I guess I should start with the books we know about, and then we'll talk about what's loading, what's coming next. So you have Scotty, which I just showed everyone, which is a really great book based on Norse mythology, right?
Yep.
How did you become interested in that?
Yeah, sure. So it is a pretty interesting kind of story of how I arrived at that particular mythology. So my wife and I got married in Iceland. We actually, going back even further, we got engaged in Iceland. We went to the country with some friends of ours, and we got engaged at the Black Sand Beach in Vik, which is in the southern, not the southernmost, but pretty far southern part of Iceland. It's a beautiful black beach. You can't necessarily walk down to the water because the waves crash so heavily, but it is really quite beautiful. And so we got engaged there. And when we were looking for a place to get married, it was Danielle who suggested we go back to Iceland. And I say all that because Iceland, Norse mythology is the mythology of that part of the world. The first historian who actually put pen to paper and wrote down about the Norse gods was an Icelandic historian named Snorri Sturluson. And I think that was around the 1100s. And so while we were in Iceland both times we were in Iceland, we went to some of the saga museums. We learned about the mythology. And so when I was thinking about what story I wanted to tell and what mythology really resonated with me, that is what came to the forefront. And that seemed also to be what resonated with the publisher, because I had written a lot of books, science fiction to fantasy to horror. And it wasn't until I'd written Skadi that Maria that just showed that actually got published. So,
wow. Tell me, what was your process like when it comes to finding that publisher? Who's your publisher, and how did you find them, or how did they find you?
Yeah, so Sunbury Press is the publisher. They are a traditional publisher based here in Pennsylvania, in Central PA, actually. And they've been around. This is their 20th year. So they got started back in 2004. And I actually ended up talking with the owner, and he started the company because he was looking to just put together a sort of a catalog per se of family accounts. And so he turned that whole process into an actual publishing company. And they've been publishing for 20 years now. I think they lean into historical writing, but they dabble every now and then in stuff that falls outside of that space. For example, my fantasy novels. How I found them was, so I had known about them for a few years now. So earlier I said that I like to write, and I would always try and find a publisher or an agent when I'd finished writing my stories. And so I kept a catalog of all the publishers or agents that I found over those years of writing, and they were on that list. So I started with them when I started soliciting for Skadi. But I also, rigorously just do a lot of Googling and some networking, but yeah, it's very meticulous. I keep a spreadsheet of the companies or publishers that I reach out to and the agents I reach out to. And then I try and check back in with them after a couple of weeks or months to see if they've had any interest. I no longer do that. I stick with Sunbury, but if Sunbury ever says, Steve, we're done with you, then I'll have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. So I remember Sunbury like over time. A lot of the history books that now you'll see in like I know CBS has a little part of rounder full of Sunbury Press, but everything about Harrisburg, about the Black community
Yep.
here, about like so many different things. So that's really cool. Really good publisher. How have you had a lot of success with your publications?
Yeah, no, right. So it's kind of funny that when Sunbury first reached out with their contract and their offer, I, not jokingly, I thought, okay, I made it. I'm going to be a millionaire now. I started thinking about all the places that I wanted to go, and with my, millions in royalties, and after having gone through this process a few times now, I have learned that it's a very few who end up multi-millionaires because of their books. That being said, I have had a lot of success with my novels. I'm not rich yet, but people seem to really resonate with the stories. They like them. That's real. It's really quite something when someone says, "Hey, I read your book and I loved this character or this experience or what they did when this bad guy was doing X, Y, and Z." That has really, really touched me. And I had to reset my expectations on what selling books meant. So I have sold almost 1,000 copies of Skadi and Tira, which is the second book. And for a smaller indie press, first time author, I think that's really good. And even better than that, though, is the reactions that I've received from folks. There's one person in particular, this guy named Chris, who I've heard numerous times over and over again how much he enjoys the stories. He's a friend of a friend, and my friend constantly is telling me how much he loves them. So stuff like that, it really kind of keeps me going.
That's really great. When it comes to marketing your books, how much does the publisher do, and how much is you?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And so Sunbury Press, they handle all of the, they put the book together, they edit it, they do all of that stuff. They have a lighter touch when it comes to the actual marketing. They have a social media account. They will set up like book signings at book fairs and stuff. But I've taken on a lot of the individual marketing. So, I reach out to bookstores and coffee shops in the area that have that would be willing to host me for a book signing, and I've done that over and over again. And sorry, I've done that over and over again, and kind of built up relationships with folks in the area that when I have a new book, they immediately say yes, and that's paid dividends because when I first learned that I was going to have a book coming out, my immediate reaction was, okay, I have to set up a social media account. I have to do all that. But what I learned in doing that social media stuff is that most authors, especially indie authors, seem to stay online. And so I wanted to separate myself from that group by doing in person as much as possible. And fortunately for me, we were just coming out of the pandemic. And so I was able to do a lot of in-person book engagements, which I think really kind of helped people, helped me, I know for sure, get my name out there. But I think also helped people sort of have that increased engagement and better experience with the story. So, yeah.
Well, that is really cool. I'm really glad that there's someone else that likes to do in-person engagements and stuff, because I love that. And as you know, with great readings can sell books.
Yeah.
You like that. That's fun. Well, I really enjoyed being able to do a reading with you at your mother's house. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
House. That was a really neat thing. And I feel so like that's one of those moments that could, like, historically, like 50 years from now, they could be like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
In space. Because I mean, think of who was it. Hetty Love was there. Like,
Yep.
So many important people in the Black community were there, and we were there together, and that was so cool. So I really, Yeah, your parents are great. I love them.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we do too.
They're in Portugal right now.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds nice.
Yep. Yep.
Just a romantic trip or something.
Yeah. Empty nesters.
Yeah, those wild kids.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know about what is loading, what's coming up. I know
Yeah.
you
So
have something coming out.
yeah. So I do have another book on the way. It's coming out in the spring of this year, and what's exciting is that I talked about forming those relationships with folks in the area to help maybe smooth or make or easier the process for having these like in-person events, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so the Midtown Scholar was interested in hosting me for a main stage discussion for around my books for the release of the third one. And so I jumped at that. I reached out to Patty Kim, who is a local elected official, popular person in the area, friend of mine, and asked her if she would be interested in interviewing me on stage, not just about the books, but about the writing process, about advocacy, about being engaged.
Mm.
And so, because the underlying message in all my stories is around engagement and being, a person that tries to do right by their community, right? So it's Norse mythology, it's fantasy, it's action, but the underlying message is intended to be one that is, get up and go do something and try and make the world a little bit better. And so we're going to talk about that during this book event. So that's May 24th, right, at the Midtown Scholar. But the third, so this is the third book that's on its way. It is a direct sequel to the first book, however. So we're going to be revisiting Skadi and her adventures. The feedback that I've received from folks is that this is a far more grounded story than the first two, which is exciting to me because that was the intention. With the first book, I wanted folks to get engaged. I wanted them to be a part of these, to meet these characters. But for this book, I'm like, okay, well, we understand the world now that these folks are living in, that these characters are living in. Let's explore that a little bit. And, is it a perfect novel? No, but no novel is. But I do think for folks who enjoyed the first two, they're going to get to see more of the world that these characters reside in. And that'll be, very special.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So I'm really excited. So May 24th. I wonder if they'll stream that at all.
I'm hoping, yeah. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I think, the folks that I've talked to this about all seem super excited. I had the opportunity to be a part of the Keystone Literacy Conference for 2 years in a row now because of my novels. And all of those folks are super excited about participating. I think it's going to be huge. Fingers crossed. It could be just me and Patty and like two other people in the audience, but I don't think that'll be the case.
I'm feeling good. I have a good feeling about this, Stephen. I really do.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. I didn't want to take too much of your time today, but I really appreciate you logging on after work and just talking to me about the book business a little bit. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm happy to do it. This is super exciting. This is something that I've always wanted to do and be an author. My first job out of college, I was the manager of a parking garage in Pittsburgh. And, I remember thinking to myself that I don't want to rest on my laurels. Like, this isn't necessarily what I went to school for and what I want to continue to do with myself. But, I didn't quite know what my next steps were going to be. And so I started just bringing my laptop with me to work and writing stories then, because I knew that I always wanted to write a novel. And I said, well, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And so that sort of helped form a habit of writing. And it took a long time, but, finally I did get a novel across the finish line. And that was really something special.
Wow. Tell me something. I don't know if you heard these words in writers' circles, but are you a plotter or a pantser? You know what those are?
Yep. Like where you kind of, one is like you have a fully fleshed out story, and then before you even start writing, versus like you feel your way out or you feel your way through the story.
Yeah.
And I hate to give this as a cop-out answer, but I'm a little bit of both, right? I do know where I want to take my stories and how they end before I start writing it, and I have each chapter sort of fleshed out, right? So I guess I definitely lean towards a plotter, but what I'm finding with the story that I'm actually currently writing is that you get to a point where it starts to write itself, and I don't want to push against what would logically happen next just so it can fit within the narrative that I'd already drafted. And so I am a plotter, but I let myself kind of go. I let the story go where it needs to, that so it makes sense. So yeah, so I think so. I'm a little bit of both, but I lean towards being a plotter.
Yeah. So like I think it's a spectrum. And so you're a plantser leaning towards plotter.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think I'm a plantser, like a little bit of both, but leaning towards pantser, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, yeah. I just think because sometimes, because there's a larger, also here's my thing too. There's a larger narrative that each of these stories fits within. So it is a planned series. So there is some like beats that I need to hit to make sure that it works as a whole. But I also open myself up to just kind of seeing where things go. Like a lot of that's actually playing into this story that I'm working on now. So the book that's coming out is book number 3, and the book that I'm writing is book number 4. And there's some aspects of book number 4 that, I didn't realize going into this story that I was going to need to have. And now I can't see them not being a part of the story or playing a core or integral role in the narrative.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder how I often think of that sort of thing, like if you're watching something like Star Wars, and
Mm-hmm.
you know how like they put out 3 and then 100 years go by and then they put out 3 more and then we got to go back to the other one and now we got series, and I'm like, all these different iterations of this world and this universe basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what if they missed something? What if
Oh,
they, you know?
well, I mean, so like people do this all the time. They retcon stuff, right? Retroactive connectivity, where they go
Oh,
back and like fix something or fix quote
yeah.
in a past narrative so that it aligns with something they come up with later. And I've always sort of had a mixed feeling on retconning because it means that what was written in the past, like you're going back and revising something that you hadn't thought of, or you're trying to manipulate the past so that it fits with a narrative in the future, and something about that feels inauthentic. I'm not saying it can't be done, but like I've never been too big a fan of retconning. Like just go where the story is going. Like if that wasn't the case back then, that means it shouldn't be the case now. And so that's my
Mhm.
feeling. Again, I'm just one person, but I try my best. Like if something new occurs in my stories, then that I didn't think of prior, I just do I try to do a really good job of just explaining why it's there and maybe, what it means going forward. But I don't try and like make up some BS reason as to why it didn't happen prior.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yes, we've seen things like that. Um, and Sam never left home. So
Yeah.
anyway, it just ends on a bad note.
Yeah.
Young people don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway. Well, this is a great discussion, and they're learning new industry jargon, so write this down:
Oh yeah.
retcon, plotter, pantser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Plot armor.
Plot armor. Ooh, what's plot armor?
Oh yeah. So I don't know if these are official terms, but like plot armor is, when a story's written in a way that keeps a character alive arbitrarily or allows for a character to succeed arbitrarily. So I'm trying to think of a good example. Oh, here's a good example. And spoiler alert, but you know what? It's been a long time. When Jon Snow was brought back to life, right? And he just
Mhm.
conveniently was brought back to life for the plot to continue. That's plot armor, right? If he died, he needs to stay dead, and then the story needs to build around that event happening. But if he's brought back to life, or he miraculously is saved because some character who we had no clue was there all of a sudden pops out of a corner and saves somebody, moments like that take you out of the narrative. They feel forced and inauthentic. So that's usually plot armor. And you see it throughout some of our best stories. Our best stories aren't immune to it. Another spoiler alert, but the movie Training Day, when the new recruit is saved because he just happened to have rescued the one guy's sister earlier in the story, like that's plot armor, because there's no way in hell, statistically speaking, in Los Angeles or wherever they were at, whatever city they were at, that he would just happen to meet the sister earlier in the day that would be the reason his life gets saved later in the day. So those are moments of plot armor, and they happen even in the best stories.
Oh, yes. I hadn't thought much about that. Very cool.
Yes.
So, I can't think of anything else. Is there anything we need to know about? Like, can we pre-order the book? Is it there yet, or?
No, it's not there yet.
Okay.
It's coming, but I would say for folks just to keep an eye out if they want to follow me on Instagram. That's usually where I update folks, but I do have a mailing list as well. All on my website, StephenGreerWilliams.com. Again, I think the important date to keep in mind, though, is May 24th at 7 to 10. That's a Friday. I think it's going to be a good time. We're going to have wine and hors d'oeuvres on the front end. Patty and I will get up on the stage around 7:30 or 7:45. We'll have about a 30-minute dialogue, and then afterwards, I'll sign copies of the books for folks.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the calendar. I want to be there. May 24th.
Right on.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time out to talk to me. And everyone, this is Living Lit, and we're all about that lit life. So, yeah, I hope you have a really great night. Thank you so much for taking.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.